Good evening, good evening, friends. Welcome to my class. Today I am going to discuss an essay written by C.P. Snow, and the title of the essay is Hardy and Ramanujan. This essay is prescribed for second semester BCom students, BCom and BBM students. In the essay, we get lot of information of our great Indian mathematician Ramanujan. This essay is written by C.P. Snow. He was a British scientist, novelist, and a civil servant. He worked at Cambridge in molecular physics for 20 years. When the Second World War broke out, he became a scientific advisor to the British government. Snow began an 11-volume novel sequence called Strangers and Brothers. He published other novels such as Their Wisdom in 1974 and A Coat of Varnish in 1979. He also wrote biographies of prominent personalities and collected them in a volume called Variety of Men in 1966. Why I am telling all these details is because in this essay we find how Ramanujan, a mathematician from India, becomes a world famous mathematician in the world through a greatest personality called Hardy. C.P. Snow has given here the biography of Ramanujan, and this extract is taken from Hardy's in Variety of Men. Hardy was a famous English mathematician known for his work in number of theory. He mentored the Indian mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan. Because of his extraordinary contribution to the field of mathematics, with hardly any formal training, he was not even educated, he was not even I'll tell you later when I read out the biography of Ramanujan. When Hardy was asked this greatest contribution to the mathematics, he replied that it was the discovery of Ramanujan. This is the tribute that Hardy gave to Ramanujan. So, in the first part of the essay, we see how Hardy discovers Ramanujan. C.P. Snow has shown no secrecy at all. It was Hardy. One morning, early in 1913, he found among his letters on the breakfast table a large untidy envelope decorated with Indian stamps. When he opened it, he found sheets of paper by no means fresh, on which, in a non-English holograph, was line after line of symbols. Hardy glanced at them without enthusiasm. He was by this time at the age of 36, a world famous mathematician, and a world famous mathematician already discovered are usually exposed to cranks. He was accustomed to receiving manuscripts from strangers, proving the prophetic wisdom of great pyramid. The revelations of the elders of Zion, or the cryptograms that Bacon had inserted in the place of so-called Shakespeare. So Hardy felt more than anything bored. He glanced at the letter written in halting English, signed by an unknown Indian, asking him to give an opinion on these mathematical discoveries. The script appeared to consist of theorems, most of them wild or fantastic, looking one or two already well known, laid out as they were original. There were no proofs of any kind. Hardy was not only bored but irritated at these handwritten scripts. It seemed like a curious kind of fraud. He put the manuscript aside and went on his daily routine. Since the routine did not vary throughout his life, it is possible to reconstruct it. First he read the Times, then over breakfast, This happened in January. If there were any Australian cricket scores, he would start with them, studied them with clarity and intense attention. But when the meal was over in the afternoon, there may have been slight delay. Hardy liked a glass of wine, but despite the glorious vistas of Alan Saint Aubin which had fired his youthful imagination, he found he did not really enjoy lingering in the combination room over port and walnuts. Littlewood, his friend, a good deal more uh, idiot. So there may have been a delay. Anyway, by 9 o'clock, they were in one of Hardy's rooms with the manuscript stretched in out. It was the occasion which one would have liked to be present. Hardy, with his combination of remorseless clarity with intellectual dash, he Littlewood, his friend, he was highly imaginative, powerful, humorous. They both apparently did not take them long. Before midnight, they knew, and they knew for certain the writer of this manuscript was a man of genius. At night, both Hardy and Littlewood, they went through Ramanujan's manuscripts and found this is a man of genius. That was such they could judge that night. It was only later Hardy decided Ramanujan was in terms of natural mathematical genius in the class of Gauss and Euler, but that he could not expect because of the defects of his education and because he had come on the scene too late in the line of mathematical history to make contribution on the same scale. It all sounds easy, the kind of judgment great mathematicians should have been able to make, but here the author mentioned there were two persons who do not come out of the story with credit. Out of chivalry, Hardy concealed this in all that he said and wrote about Ramanujan. But what the author C.P. Snow thinks is these two people are concerned, people are now, they have been dead. However, for many years, it is the time to tell the truth. The truth is, Hardy was not the first eminent mathematician to be sent to Ramanujan, that Ramanujan script. But there had been two more before him, both English, both of the highest personal standing. They had each written the manuscripts without a comment. What C.P. Snow think that history relates what they said, if they anything. When Ramanujan became famous, anyone who has seen sent unsolicited material will have a sleeking sympathy with them. Anyway, the following day, Hardy went into action. He thought Ramanujan must be brought to England without delay. Money was not a major problem. Trinity had usually been good supporting unorthodox talent. Once Hardy determined and decided no human agency could have stopped Ramanujan, but they needed a certain amount of help from a superhuman one. Back in India, Ramanujan turned out to be a poor clerk in Madras, living with his wife on 20 pounds a year. But he was also a Brahmin, unusually strict about his religious observances, with a mother who was even stricter. It seemed impossible that he could break the proscription and cross the river, that is Simolangana. Fortunately, his mother had the highest respect for the goddess of Namakkal. One morning, Ramanujan's mother made a startling announcement that she had a dream in which that night she had seen her son sitting in a big hall among a group of Europeans. And the goddess of Namakkal had commanded her mother that she should not stand in the way of Ramanujan. She should fulfill his life's purpose. This, say Ramanujan's Indian biographers, it is recorded there, was a very agreeable surprise to all concerned. In 1914, Ramanujan arrived in England. So far as Hardy could detect, he should not trust insight for Ramanujan, despite the difficulties of breaking the caste proscriptions, did not believe much in theological doctrine, except for a vague pantheistic benevolence. In any more than Hardy did himself, but he did certainly believe in ritual. When Trinity put him up in college, within 4 years he became a fellow. There was no Alan St. Aubyn self-indulgence for him at all. Hardy used to find him ritually changed into his pyjamas, cooking vegetables, rather miserably in a frying pan in his own room. Hardy and Ramanujan's association was a strangely touching one. Hardy did not forget that he was in the presence of a genius. But genius that was, even in mathematics, almost untrained, because Ramanujan had not been able to enter Madras University. He could not matriculate in English. According to Hardy's report, he was always amiable and good-natured, but no doubt he sometimes found Hardy's conversation outside mathematics more than little baffling. He seems to have listened with a patient smile on his good, friendly, homely face. Even inside mathematics, they had to come to terms with the difference in their education. Ramanujan was self-taught. He knew nothing of modern rigor. In a sense, he did not know what a proof was. In an uncharacteristically sentimental moment, Hardy once wrote that if he had been better educated, he would have been less Ramanujan. Coming back to his ironic senses, Hardy later corrected himself and said that the statement was nonsense. If Ramanujan had better educated, he would have been even more wonderful than he was. In fact, Hardy was obliged to teach him some formal mathematics, as though Ramanujan had been a scholarship candidate at Winchester. Hardy said that this was the most singular experience of his life. What did modern mathematics look like to someone who had the deepest insight but who had literally never heard most of it? Dear students, you read this biography of Ramanujan. All the events are very surprising, and we feel happy how an Indian becomes very famous in England. Anyway, these are two personalities. They produced together 5 papers of highest class. Ramanujan and Hardy, they presented papers. Hardy showed supreme originality of his own. Generosity and imagination were for once rewarded in full. Hardy's generous nature, kindness, all brought him fame, and he became popular not because of generosity or kindness, because of his skill and talent along with. This is a story of human virtue. Once people had started behaving well, they went on behaving better. It is good to remember England gave Ramanujan such honors as were possible. The Royal Society elected him a fellow at the age of 30, which even for a mathematician is very young. Trinity also elected him a fellow in the same year. He was the first Indian to be given either of these distinctions. He was amiably grateful, but he soon became ill. So that is very unfortunate in case of Ramanujan. He was in the hospital. Hardy used to visit him as he lay dying in hospital at Putney. It was one of those visits that there happened the incident of the taxi cab number. Whenever these two friends they meet, they converse with figures, mathematics everywhere. Hardy had gone out to Putney by taxi. As usual, his chosen method of convenience, he went into the room where Ramanujan was laying. Hardy, always clumsy about introducing a conversation, probably without greeting and certainly his first remark is he did not greet him with good morning or whatever it is. He simply says, the number of my taxi cab was 1729. It seems to me a rather dull number, that Hardy says. To which Ramanujam replies, no, Hardy, it is a very interesting number because it is the smallest number expressible as the sum of two cubes in different ways. So this is how they both greet each other. When they greet each other, they greet it with maths. This is the exchange of Hardy recorded it. It must be substantially accurate. He was the most honest man of men, and further, no one could possibly have invented it. So this is Hardy's invention. It is difficult in wartime to remove Ramanujam to a kinder climate. He was died of tuberculosis. Back in Madras, 2 years after the war, as Hardy wrote in Apology in his roll call of mathematicians, Glois died of 21, Abel at 27, Ramanujan at 33, Riemann at 40. I do not know. It is an instance of major mathematical advance initiated by a man of past 50. This is what C.P. Snow ends his essay. Dear students, read the essay in detail and understand the full information given about Hardy and Ramanujan. Thank you.